this lecture, you're going to learn about the Middle Colonies in the 17th century, and special attention will be paid to New York and Pennsylvania. The Middle Colonies' first colony was New York. They later added New Jersey, Pennsylvania, and Delaware. Until the middle of the 17th century, the English neglected the area between Virginia and New England despite obvious environmental advantages. The climate was healthier than the Chesapeake and more temperate than New England. The Swedes and the Dutch established their own colonies in the region, New Sweden in the Delaware Valley and New Netherland in the Hudson Valley. As explained earlier, the Dutch through the West Indian Company will settle in this region. Unlike the English colonies, New Netherland did not attract many Dutch immigrants. In order to increase population numbers, they became very lenient on who could get admitted to the colony. The people that lived in the Netherlands were remarkably diverse religiously, especially compared with the English settlers to the north and south. The West Indian Company struggled to govern the diverse colonists and never permitted settlers to form a representative government. This left the colony vulnerable to English attacks during the 1650s and 1660s, resulting in the handover of New Netherland to England in 1664. The English and the Dutch fought 3 wars against each other between 1652 and 1674 and were commercial rivals. And the breaking point came in March of 1664 when English King Charles II awarded the colony's land to his brother, the Duke of York. Even though the two countries were then technically at peace, a few months later, 4 warships with several hundred soldiers on board arrived in New Amsterdam's harbor and demanded that the Dutch surrender. As mentioned earlier, something that will make the Middle Colonies different from other regions is that most of the Middle Colonies will be proprietary colonies, colonies that were owned by a person or family who made laws and appointed officials as he or they pleased. And once the English take over New Netherland, it will be named for the proprietor James, the Duke of York, and founder of the expedition against the Dutch. As the new proprietor of the colony, the Duke of York exercised almost the same unlimited authority over the colony as had the West Indian Company. Although the Duke permitted religious toleration in the colony, the policy was less an affirmation of liberty of conscience and more a recognition of the reality that New York was the most heterogeneous colony in the 17th century English North American colonies. By 1646, the population along the Hudson River included Dutch, French, Danes, Norwegians, Swedes, English, Scots, Irish, Germans, Poles, Bohemians, Portuguese, and Italians. Aside from continuing to be one of the most diverse regions in the area, the Dutch continued to exercise an important social and economic influence in New York. Long after the fall of New Netherlands and their integration into the British colonial system. Their sharp, steep gable roof, for example, became a permanent part of the city's architecture, and their merchants gave Manhattan much of its original bustling commercial atmosphere. The creation of New York indirectly led to the founding of New Jersey and Pennsylvania. In 1664, the Duke of York granted the area between the Hudson and Delaware rivers to two English noblemen. These lands were split into two distinct colonies, East Jersey and West Jersey. One of West Jersey's proprietors included William Penn. Penn was a member of the Society of Friends, otherwise known as Quakers, and he intended his colony to be a colony of heaven for the children of light. The Quakers were hardworking, serious, and moral. Quakers rejected violence and refused to serve in the military or pay taxes for its support. The Quaker concept of an open, generous God who made his love equally available to all people continually brought Quakers into conflict with the English government. Penn, however, remained in kinda good terms with Charles II, who granted him land to found a Quaker colony in America, partly to rid England of the Quakers in 1681. Charles made Penn the proprietor of a new colony called Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania consisted of about 45,000 square miles west of the Delaware River and the former New Sweden. Quakers, who were mostly artisans, farmers, and laborers, flocked to Pennsylvania from England, Ireland, Wales, and other parts of the European continent. Like New England's aspirations to be a city upon a hill, Pennsylvania was to be an example of godliness. But Penn's dream was not to create a colony of unity, but rather a colony of harmony. The colony attracted a diverse collection of migrants. Despite its toleration and diversity, Pennsylvania was as much a Quaker colony as New England was a stronghold of Puritanism, and Penn used civil government to enforce religious morality. As proprietor, Penn had extensive powers subject to review only by the king. Penn had a somewhat better relationship with Native Americans, well, that is in comparison to the northern and southern colonies. But of course, this did not last that long. It only lasted while Penn was alive, and things will get pretty bad later. Like in all the English colonies, there was slavery in the Middle Colonies. Some Quakers, however, believed that slavery was particularly troublesome on the grounds that it required violence. And in 1688, members of the Society of Friends in Germantown, outside Philadelphia, signed a petition protesting the institution of slavery among fellow Quakers. The Quakers are considered to be some of the earliest abolitionists in the English colonies. Eventually, Pennsylvania became very successful over the years. By the end of the colonial period, Philadelphia, the heart of Pennsylvania, had 30,000 people that lived there, representing many languages, creeds, and trades. Their talent for successful business enterprise made the city one of the thriving centers of the British Empire. So, as I mentioned before, it is important to remember that despite popular belief, the English colonies in North America were founded for different reasons and by different people. More importantly, these founders would leave a lasting legacy on each region, even till this day. Well, that is all for now. Please stay tuned for the next video lecture.